Great. I would like to thank NTU, NTC, and Ms. Fu for inviting me and to join this webinar to meet all of you and give a talk about cyber threat intelligence and how we can enhance cyber defense operations to build up resiliency against cyber threats. So without further ado, let me just jump into the presentation. So just a bit about myself. I am a senior manager with the Risk Assurance practice of PWC Singapore, and I specialize in cyber threat intelligence. In PwC, I lead a team of cybersecurity analysts in performing security investigations, cyber threat intelligence, cyber threat detection and response engagements for clients that include government organizations and also private organizations. So just a bit of an introduction about myself. So today's topic, the agenda for today is discovering, or rather rediscovering, about intelligence and threat intelligence. I will go through some definitions and key concepts that are important for cyber threat intelligence. Following that, we will go through some of the relationships between threats, vulnerabilities, and risks. And also, I'll share with you some sources of threat intelligence and also discuss on the many ways that organizations can use threat intelligence to beef their security posture. Lastly, I will also touch on the various types of threat intelligence services that are out there in the market, and we can close off with a discussion in the Q&A session. Know thyself, know thy enemy. This famous quote is from a renowned Chinese general and military strategist from the 6th century called Sun Tzu. He is the author of an influential Chinese book on military strategy called The Art of War, which is quite popular till today. This quote by him questions us to understand ourselves first so that we can understand the opportunities that we present to our adversaries. From a cybersecurity perspective, organizations must make an effort to understand themselves first. Only then they will be able to understand the adversary. If an organization does not understand its assets, its infrastructure, its people or business operations, it won't be able to understand if it's presenting any opportunity to its adversaries. It's also difficult to identify the intent of its threat actors. Therefore, for having an effective threat intelligence program, it is imperative for organizations to firstly know about themselves first and also the crown jewels that they're trying to protect. Cyber threat actors have showed no signs of slowing down according to countless statistics. The problem is becoming more and more worse across the globe. With the increased number of attacks and complexity, organizations are faced with damaged reputations, business disruptions, and even loss of revenue. While organizations continue to rely on well-established security practices, many are seeking additional ways to keep pace with the increased wave of attacks. To effectively manage cyber risks, organizations must build a holistic view of the threats that they face and try to understand the adversary's capabilities, intentions, and actions, and respond accordingly. Many organizations at present are looking to threat intelligence for this holistic view of the adversaries, but often find it difficult to integrate it into their current setup. However, with a well-structured threat intelligence program, organizations can step up their game to take on cyber threats effectively. Moving on. So touching on something that we all have been going through for the past few months. The coronavirus pandemic has been the biggest crisis of the past few decades. Since its emergence in Asia late last year, the virus has spread to almost every continent. Millions of people, including you and me, have been affected by it by one way or another. And most countries have gone into lockdown to contain the spread of the virus. Travel bans have been imposed in many places, which is continues to be into effect. We have witnessed a massive transformation in the way we do things. We wear masks when we step out of home. Organizations have moved to work from home arrangements, and telecommunications such as Zoom has gained huge popularity and touted to be the way forward for people to congregate online and avoid physical contact. With all these changes that have been happening so rapidly, how has this opened us up for a wider attack surface? And what does intelligence tell us about this new change? Cyber threat actors are capitalizing on the panic and fear caused by COVID-19 pandemic to conduct malicious cyber activities around the globe. Since early this year, threat actors have been intensifying their malicious cyber activities, capitalizing on the coronavirus theme to steal personal information and credentials. As the concerns spike, the increased cases of threat actors impersonating officials and government agencies, especially organizations at the front line of the COVID-19 response, as you can see in the slide. Organizations therefore should reevaluate the cybersecurity posture and take necessary precautions to counter the threats. A good place to start would be having some intelligence on the cyber attacks that are going around and make important decisions to protect the firm and its staff and the people around it from such attacks. So before we look at threat intelligence, let's think about the term intelligence. What is intelligence? There has been a long debate about intelligence by thinkers, philosophers, psychologists over many decades, and intelligence has been defined in so many different ways. For example, the capacity for logic, self-awareness, critical thinking, problem solving, understanding. More generally, it can be described as the ability to perceive or infer information and to retain it as knowledge to be applied afterwards. So let's find out the different components of intelligence and what are we constantly exposed to. So as you can see here, intelligence comes in different forms: data, information, knowledge, insight, and wisdom. In its simplest form, we have data or raw data, which is a collection of facts in raw or unorganized format. This can include signals, numbers, characters, which come in raw format. It's usually abundant and plentiful. Information can be termed as data that is being given meaning by defining relational connections. And the appropriate collection of information that translates to a useful manner becomes knowledge and insight. Wisdom is the end product that can be reached through the extension of knowledge. It considers all the output from the previous levels, which include data, information, knowledge, insight, and ultimately aids us in the decision-making process. Let me illustrate this with my favorite concept. Let's say you're driving down Orchard Road, for example, and your eyes spot the color red. That is data being fed into your brain by your eyes. Next, your brain quickly tries to add meaning by saying that the red light is in fact from a traffic light. Soon after, this information is given context or meaning, where your brain tells you that the red light is right in front of you and you're fast approaching it. So with all this valuable input and intelligence that you're gathering, your wisdom kicks in and informs you to take an action to stop the car. Therefore, as you collect more data, apply meaning to it and context to it, the outcome allows you to make well-informed decisions, and this is highly applicable to cybersecurity domain as well as our everyday lives. Previously, we saw the many forms of intelligence. Now let's take a look at the many types of intelligence. So firstly, we have human intelligence, also known as HUMINT. The most obvious type of intelligence, which is gathered from human beings using interpersonal contact, directly or indirectly. It can also happen through more covert means such as observation. Let's say you are being approached by a reporter. That is a form of gathering human intelligence directly. And let's say if you are being observed by an investigator covertly, that's also a means of collecting human intelligence through observation. Signal intelligence, also known as SIGINT, gathers information via interception of signals, and these signals can be communication between people or electronic instrumentation. Open source intelligence, OSINT, is the most popular and most common, and is the collection of information from publicly available sources. This data includes news, social media sites, public reports, anything that is in the public domain and publicly available. Open source intelligence is particularly useful for the computer security community. They can research and share freely on publicly available forums on the latest threat campaigns and cyber threat actors. Next, we have geospatial intelligence, also known as GeoInt. It is the collection of information from geospatial data, which includes, for example, GPS data and maps. This information can provide additional geographical contextual information on threats and helps in formulating geographical attribution. Lastly, we have MESINT, which is measurement and signature intelligence. This is a technical branch of intelligence usually used in military applications, which serves to detect, track, identify, and describe signatures such as radar signals. Moving on. What is threat intelligence? There are many definitions for the term threat intelligence that can be found in the internet if you Google. But the real takeaway is how easily can we recall and remember what it means in simplified format. So let's take a look at how we can define threat intelligence. But first, also let's learn a bit about its history. Intelligence has been collected and produced for centuries. However, it wasn't until the beginning of the 20th century that intelligence formalized into a proper discipline. Modern threat intelligence that we use traces its roots back to military intelligence. Just after World War I, the US Army regulations identified the essential duties of military intelligence, which included collection, collation, and dissemination of military intelligence. In the next couple of years, this evolved into 4 distinct functions for the military intelligence: collection of raw data, processing of information, dissemination of information, and also helping in the decision-making process, which also aids us in getting a sense of direction. So this is the military intelligence cycle, from which the threat intelligence cycle is formulated. I will share it in the next coming sections. In a military context, commanders want to know the intent of the adversary so that they can make better strategic choices or to prepare for an incoming attack. Threat intelligence was used to provide guidance and direction for commanders to make informed decisions on the battlefield. Likewise, in the cybersecurity context, we have adopted this model to learn more about our cyber attackers and make informed decisions so that we can protect ourselves from our adversaries. Now let's look at the definition of threat intelligence. According to the global research and advisory firm Gartner, threat intelligence means evidence-based knowledge and action-oriented advice about an existing or emerging threat. Threat intelligence aids in making informed decisions regarding a subject's response to a specific threat. This, I say, is a very good definition, but what if we are able to skim this down to something that we can recall easier on the go? If someone were to pop up next to you and ask, hey, what's threat intelligence? We are not going to recite this. So let's see how we can recall this much easier in a more condensed format. Timely, actionable insights. Threat intelligence is timely and actionable analyzed information, also known as insights, about the past, present, and predicted attacks against an entity, produced through analysis of available information which aids us in the decision-making process. Threat intelligence can give an organization an understanding of the threats and threat events it faces or it may face in the future. While threat intelligence seldom needs to control over its adversaries, it enables the organization to make more informed decisions on its security loopholes and associated risks, and also corresponds to the business impact as an outcome. The threat intelligence cycle that we saw earlier takes heavy reference from the military intelligence cycle that we saw earlier. This intelligence cycle is the process by which raw data and information is identified, collected, and then developed into finished intelligence for use by decision makers. All phases should incorporate a review process to ensure that the required material is being processed and passed on correctly. The intelligence user's requirements must constantly be in the center of the process. That should drive the whole intelligence cycle. So planning and direction is the first phase of the intelligence cycle. It is used to coordinate intelligence activities to most effectively serve the user's requirement that was defined. This phase should determine the exact requirements and establish what data and information is required and how it should be collected. The planning and direction phase. The second phase is collection. It involves the gathering of data and information that is likely to meet the identified requirements that we have said earlier on. This will typically involve collecting from a wide array of sources. It requires good planning and direction to separate the useful signals from the noise. Processing and analysis is the third phase, in which raw data and information is collated, fused with other sources, and turned into intelligence. Analysts will typically apply a variety of qualitative and quantitative analytic techniques to assess this importance and implications of processed information. They integrate it by combining different pieces of information to identify patterns, and then they interpret it to see if there's any developed knowledge from it. Analysts are likely to use a wide range of techniques in order to ensure accurate and unbiased assessments, and the outcome should be predictive and actionable. At this stage, the evaluation of the reliability of the source and material is also performed. The last stage is dissemination, sharing of the information. This has to be timely shared, and the frequency of the dissemination should match the time period of which the content is based. For example, operational material needs to be delivered more frequently, whereas strategic content will be more intermittent. This finished intelligence will aid the decision-making activities and help in developing new directions, which will restart the whole intelligence cycle again. Let's take a look at the various levels of threat intelligence. Firstly, we have strategic intelligence. Strategic intelligence assesses distinct bits of information to form integrated views. It informs decision and policymakers on the broader long-term issues, providing a timely warning of threats. Strategic cyber threat intelligence forms an overall picture of the intent and capabilities of malicious cyber threats. Through the identification of trends, patterns, emerging threats, risks, and through these activities, it informs decision-making and timely action, which is the likely outcome from strategic intelligence. Tactical intelligence assesses real-time events, investigation, and activities on the ground. It provides support for day-to-day operations and events. such as the development of signatures and indicators of compromise. Operational intelligence assesses specific potential incidents relating to events, investigations, or activities, and provides insights that can guide and support response operations. Operational cyber threat intelligence provides highly specialized, technically focused intelligence to guide and support the response to specific incidents. Such intelligence is often related to, let's say, campaigns, malwares, or tools. Lastly, we have technical intelligence. Technical intelligence refers to the indicators of compromise, such as IP addresses, file names, hashes, the data formats, which can be used to assist in identification of threat actors. Organizations either defend against too little because they don't understand the threats that they face, or try to defend against all potential threats, which is an unsustainable approach that may hinder an organization's ability to operate effectively. So, a deeper understanding about the threats, vulnerabilities, and risks helps to address this issue. Let's take a look. Risk is defined as a combination of threat, vulnerability, and the impact caused by both. In order to adopt a risk-based approach to cybersecurity, organizations need to understand the threats that they face. A threat is defined as the intent and capability of adversaries to target an asset, which can be, for example, sensitive corporate data, such as financial data or even client information, for example. It is the intelligence about the threat that enables organizations to prepare for it and defend themselves. When an organization knows how to answer key questions regarding the threat it faces, such as who is likely to target my assets, and answer key questions of where, when, how, and why, then they stand a really good chance of defending themselves. If an organization has good understanding of the threat it faces, then it can combine this understanding with an assessment of maturity of its defenses to understand the likelihood of an incident occurring. This likelihood can be combined with an assessment of impact, such as incident, to understand the risk. This allows the organization to deploy its usually limited, let's say, resources, security resources against the highest priority risks first. Users who are intending to create a threat intelligence program should draw from a wide range of different sources to enable them to attain a rounded and holistic understanding of the threats that their organization face. We will take a look at some of the sample sources and where we can gain intelligence on threats. So here I've listed some of the sources, common sources for threat intelligence. Firstly, we have indicators of compromise, also known as IOCs, which include hashes of malware samples, IP addresses, domain names, which can all be used to update security infrastructure such as firewalls and detection systems, as well as contribute to the understanding of threat actors' tactics, techniques, and procedures. IOCs on their own are classified as raw data and not processed finished intelligence. However, they are an important source for threat intelligence. Next, we have information sharing platforms, which I regularly use and my team regularly uses. So information sharing platforms can be used to provide additional context to threat actors' current activity. For example, AlienWault's Open Threat Exchange OTX, which is a crowdsourced platform used by participants in over 140 countries, or even the US CERT's automated indicator sharing platform. So rather than using these sources in isolation, effective cyber threat intelligence users, analysts, should corroborate and fuse together material from different sources to better understand the nature of the threat. Ideally, intelligence reports should be multi-sourced, potentially at the minimally fusing information from at least 2 different types of sources. Next, we have deep web and dark web. Deep web is information collected from, let's say, member-only hacking forums frequented by cyber criminals. These sources can provide a valuable insight into the tools and services advertised and requested by cyber criminals. Dark web includes marketplaces that are hosted on anonymity-focused networks such as the Tor network, I2P network, where criminals congregate to purchase and sell illegal goods and services. This will enable companies and organizations to identify if their data, which can be, for example, login credential, credit card information, valuable intellectual property is being available or being advertised for sale on the dark web, or even identify if their company infrastructure is being targeted by looking at the chat. Next, we have client-derived data. Client-derived data can be data extracted from a client's environment. Example, client security tools such as SIEM, which is a security information and event management system, or other log systems that can be used to correlate with other sources for performing threat hunting exercises. We have malware analysis, which allows analysts to extract information such as indicators of compromise from a sample, which can be used to search in a firm's IT estate for signs of compromise. Malware analysis also allow us to malware analysis also allows us to better understand the latest tactics and techniques, procedures that are being used by threat actors, which in return can inform defenders to better respond. Continuing with the sources of threat intelligence, we have messaging platforms. Messaging platforms are also used by threat actors to communicate and provide valuable intelligence as well. Rather than relying on semi-public forums, some cyber criminals prefer a direct means of engaging with each other to sell their goods and services. And similarly, some cyber attackers use a combination of internet relay chat channels and other messaging platforms to discuss about new operations, which can provide useful insights into potential targets for us, the defenders. We also have social media sites and forums, which can also be used to identify threat actors who may use popular networks as an alternative means of attracting potential customers, those who are interested in this illegal transactions. Social media collection may also include coverage of inadvertent data leak by employees of potential threats from malicious insiders. We also look at geopolitical developments, which can be used to derive an understanding of the intent of nation-state actors. Next, we have code repositories, such as exploit databases that can provide insights into the exploits that are available for adoption by threat actors. And this allows us to understand which vulnerabilities should be prioritized first, so we can have a good patch management process based on this. Paste sites, famous one, Pastebin site, can reveal a wide array of information, including leaked credentials, indications of impending operations, and also even evidence of breaches. Many threat actors do post sensitive company data on paste sites. For example, ransomware operators, when their ransom is not being paid, they usually threaten the company organization to say that they would want to post the information that they gain from the company on these paste sites to the public. So next, how can we use cyber threat intelligence? So in this section, we'll go through some useful frameworks that assist in cyber threat intelligence and how organizations can use them to beef up their security posture. So how are the many ways that we can use cyber threat intelligence? We can use it in prediction, prevention, detection, and response actions. So for prediction, strategic threat intelligence can help organizations forecast evolving threats before they materialize and hence plan accordingly to avoid them. In prevention, threat intelligence can be used to stop incidents from occurring in the first place. For example, this can be done through identifying malware signatures that can be used to update signature-based detection tools to prevent an attack. In detection, intelligence aids to identify threats as they arise, or they may already be present within a network. For example, we can identify our threat actors, TTPs again, and how can they be used for example, threat hunting exercises. In response action, intelligence can also provide additional context to an existing incident with a view to mitigate it. For example, again, identifying the TTPs by a threat actor that's being used once its presence has been discovered in a network, which will provide guidance on the adversary's next steps and how we can respond to the next actions. So next, I'll go through some useful frameworks that we regularly use in cyber threat intelligence. So this is the cyber kill chain. I'm sure most people in IT security would have seen this multiple times. The cyber kill chain is a way to understand the sequence of events involved in an external attack on an organization's IT environment. Understanding the cyber kill chain model can help IT security teams put strategies and technologies in place to contain the attack at various stages and better protect the IT ecosystem. So there are 7 stages here. First, we have reconnaissance, which is essentially the act of picking a target, researching about it, and looking for vulnerabilities. Following that, we have weaponization, the act of developing malware designed to exploit an identified vulnerability. Followed by delivery, act of transmitting the malware to a target system. Exploitation, stage whereby the malware begins executing on a target system. Installation, the malware installs a backdoor to allow access for the attacker to enter. Command and control, the act of gaining persistent access into a victim's systems or network. And lastly, we have the actions on objective, initiation of end goals such as data theft, data corruption, or data destruction, depending on the attacker's original goal and aim. Next, we have a very famous framework, which is called the MITRE ATT&CK framework. MITRE ATT&CK framework builds on the cyber kill chain that we saw earlier. However, it provides a deeper level of granularity. So the ATT&CK project was created as a research project to investigate the use of endpoint data and create analytics to improve post-compromise detection of adversaries operating within an enterprise network. The objective of the MITRE ATT&CK project was to create a common language when describing attacks, tactics, techniques globally. It is a community-driven initiative, and it's based on real-world observations. It's totally free, open, and globally accessible. Threat intelligence operatives and analysts, such as me and my team, we regularly reference to this MITRE ATT&CK framework, and it's something that's used globally by all security teams. Next, we have the diamond model. So in 2013, the US Department of Defense released a model for intrusion analysis, which emphasizes the relationship and characteristics of intrusions for core features. As you can see, the core features are adversary, infrastructure, capability, and victim. And this was coined as the diamond model, as is in the shape of a diamond. The diamond model was designed to track a threat actor over multiple intrusions. The diamond of the threat actor is not static, but is in constant change as attackers change their infrastructure and capabilities quite often. Each feature of the diamond, the victim, infrastructure, adversary, and capability, is a pivot point that defenders can use during the investigation to connect features of one attack with the other. So this is another very useful model. So how can we use cyber threat intelligence in our daily activities or in our security activities? So intelligence has an important role in security operations. Being from a SOC background, I used to use intelligence heavily in my SOC analyst days. So intelligence is used both to aid the SOC operators in identifying malicious activities and also feed as an output from the SOC to inform cybersecurity at the strategic level. Threat intelligence can be used to add additional context to internal sources of data, such as logs of malicious activity. Threat intelligence can help IT security management prioritize the adoption of appropriate controls through an organization. For example, if a company understands that it faces a specific type of threat and it has tactical intelligence regarding the tactics, techniques, and procedures typically used by the group, and also has operational intelligence regarding the targeting of its peers, for example, then it can adapt and improve its controls accordingly. In vulnerability management, intelligence regarding specific vulnerabilities that are likely to be exploited in the wild can help companies prioritize according to the likelihood and potential impact of exploitation. Intelligence is also critical in investigation and incident response processes. Understanding the TTPs used by threat actors enables proactive threat hunting for their presence on a network. Similarly, having an understanding of the intent and capability of threat actors allows responders to react appropriately in the event of a breach and mitigate its impact. Threat intelligence can be also provide a valuable explanation in the wake of an incident, and also assist in remediation efforts. Strategic intelligence is particularly valuable in helping an organization shape its security strategy. By understanding broader trends and shifts in adversaries' behavior, you can develop a strategy to counter it. Strategic approach is to understand your cyber threats will enable budgeting and also pave way for a long-term strategy to be developed. Cyber threat intelligence can be used in the first phase of a broader risk assessment approach as well. If an organization is able to identify their key assets, and then threat intelligence can illustrate the intent and capability of attackers who are likely to target these assets. So impact assessments can be formulated to calculate the level of risks to these assets, from which appropriate remediation steps can follow. Threat intelligence also plays a critical role in resilience testing exercises. The intelligence on which threat actors are likely to target an organization's critical functions and the key systems, along with the why and how they're likely to do it, can be used to develop threat scenarios. These scenarios can shape adversary simulation exercises and red teaming exercises, which are a more realistic approach on how threat actors may target a specific business. So these are the many ways that we can use cyber threat intelligence. Next, we will take a look at the different types of threat intelligence services in the market. So these are the three types of threat intel services, high-level threat intel services in the market. We have threat intel subscription, threat intelligence platform, also known as TIP, and data feeds. So subscriptions are typically provided via a dedicated portal or push reports, email reports to clients. Suppliers will usually provide access to a steady stream of current or historical intelligence. Some providers, such as PWC, provide bespoke subscriptions, which follow the intelligence cycle and deliver tailored intelligence reporting to meet an organization's requirements. And this can be augmented by analyst support or even in-person briefings, depending on the subscription package. Next, we have threat intelligence platforms, which are user interfaces used to aggregate and collate different feeds and subscriptions, allowing organizations to pivot from various indicators of compromise and conduct investigations on their end. Data feeds consist raw, uncontextualized or pre-analyzed data, which likely requires some processing by the recipient organization. This essentially can contain indicators of compromise, which can be directly fed into an organization's security infrastructure. So a bit about PWC's threat intelligence portfolio. PWC offers an array of threat intel services. So we have the cyber threat intelligence subscription service, which is essentially access to PWC's data feeds, signatures, as well as strategic and tactical reports. We do produce different types of reports to meet the needs of clients' requirements. And we also provide a free threat intelligence report to interested parties. So interested participants in this chat can sign up via our PWC cybersecurity site. I will also share a link to that in this chat later on. Moving on, we also provide directed research and assessments. So this is access to our threat intelligence research team, who can perform in-depth analysis relating to clients' inquiries. We also perform continuous bespoke threat intelligence monitoring service. And being a consulting business, advisory business, we also help organizations define requirements, consume and apply, and produce threat intelligence in the way that best suits the organization. Thank you everyone for your time for attending this course. Hopefully it was helpful. And thank you to you, NTC, for inviting me. I think it was a good session.